All right, let's get started. Well, again, my name is Dan Meyer. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of RCR Wireless News, and I want to welcome everyone to the RCR Wireless News Customer Experience Management webinar. Let's see here, next slide. Do that right. There we go. All right. Well, today we will be discussing trends in the CEM space, looking at both the traditional customer care angle, as well as looking at managing the experience for customers connecting to carrier services across various connection technologies. Joining me today is a pretty stacked lineup of experts on this wide-ranging topic, including Jim Curran, who's the VP of Customer Experience at Sprint, Syed Hasan, who's the CEO of Responsetek, Hillol, who's a fellow at IBB Consulting, and Sandro Tavares, who's the head of marketing for Mobile Core at Nokia Solutions and Networks. So here's a quick rundown for our one-hour webinar today. I will first provide a quick overview of some of the information in a story that we are releasing today on the CEM space. We will then bring out our panel members to provide their insight into various segments of the CEM market, looking at both the traditional customer care aspects as well as looking at network challenges in those spaces. The plan is to leave the final 10 to 15 minutes or so for Q&A from those of you listening in on the webinar. Please feel free during the webinar to send along questions using the questions tab there in the GoToMeeting control panel. If you have a question for a specific member of the panel, please make sure to include their name in the question as well, and we'll try to get that directed to the right person. For those that might be having any audio difficulties, we will try to speak as loudly and clearly as possible, but please make sure to check your audio settings as well. All right. So here's just a quick slide giving some background on RCR Wireless News. We've been covering the mobile space for more than 30 years and have a pretty lengthy history in covering the wireless ecosystem. So first I wanted to start on this topic by just giving a quick overview on the CEM space, tapping into some of the findings from a new report we are releasing today that is available from our website here at rcrwireless.com. So first of all, we looked into the CEM space, I should say, from two different angles. One was from the traditional customer service side, and the other was managing the customer experience as they move between different connection methods, including Wi-Fi and small cells. The basic findings we found from talking with people on this topic was that the wireless networks are complicated beasts that are challenging CEMs to tame these operations into something that consumers can understand and that carriers can use to boost revenues. At its core, CEM is really about making customers happy and in turn making customers long-term customers and profitable customers for carriers. Here are some of the numbers we found in writing up the story. You can see that CEM has become a big driver for IT spending across the telco space. Some numbers here from Ovum and from Informa showing that a lot of carriers are looking at deploying or increasing their spend on CEM deployments moving forward, realizing that the importance of CEM for customer care and for ensuring long-term customer usage. So, and I guess, to kind of summarize, it's a pretty lengthy report we did. It's about 4,000 words, and so I guess I pulled out about a half dozen takeaways from the story. Obviously, you can feel free to download the report and get some more details on this. But as you can see from what we have here, CEM initiatives in general need support from the top down. A lot of people we talked to about this had mentioned that successful CEM deployments have really been driven by executive level support from the top, and that's kind of been key to getting a good, strong CEM deployment throughout an organization. Another issue is that organizations need to access to as much information as possible and throughout the customer experience. This was something that was brought up by a lot of people, that for CEM deployments to really be successful, everybody throughout the organization needs to have access to all this information, but also relevant information as well, whether it's customer care representatives, people on the marketing side, people on the network side. There just needs to be a good access to all this information that's coming in to all the different organizations, and that information needs to be actionable for those involved. The customer care people need to be able to have information that they can use and a moment's notice to handle a customer care situation, or for network people need to have information that they can use to realize that there's an issue somewhere in the network from the customer care side. So the information needs to be relevant, needs to be actionable, and it needs to be widespread throughout the organization. Another issue that we found in this report was the growing role of self-care when it comes to CEM. A lot of carriers we spoke to and vendors noted that that self-care is becoming more popular, both from a consumer's point of view, where consumers are getting more comfortable with doing their own self-care. If they've got issues, they're able to dial in either to an automated prompt system or to go online and do their own care issues that way, which is good for consumers, but also a good way for carriers to be able to perhaps diversify their customer care services. Also, there's a growing role of the device as a central contact point for CEM. A lot of, obviously, smartphones becoming more and more prevalent in the marketplace, and the power and capabilities of the devices have allowed the customers to really tap into doing their own self-care that way, and also for carriers to contact customers or to interact with customers through their smartphone and through mobile devices. That's become a very popular way to handle CEM experiences. Also, there's a growing need for increased use of probes in the network to kind of tap into what's actually happening in the network that can then be used for CEM representatives and for CEM programs to really find out what's happening out there, and also software to decipher that information. So again, as mentioned earlier, that everyone across the organization can really get what they need from what's happening in the network to handle their marketing or network or customer care roles. So those are the kind of some of the big findings we found in the report. And like I said, you can download the report from the RCR Wireless site and get some more information there on that topic. Well, with that, I want to bring in our panel members here. Like I said, we've got quite a few panel members to bring in some good experience here. And first, I want to start with Jim Curran, who's the VP of Customer Experience at Sprint, to go through some of the insights into how the carrier is tackling this complicated issue. So Jim, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. So first off, understanding and focusing on our customer journey is a top priority for Sprint. And as reflected in this first chart, we have identified 12 moments of truth along the customer journey where we have the opportunity to provide the ideal experience. And as you see across this diagram here, you can see those moments of truth include things like signing up for service with Sprint, making and receiving calls, paying my bill, needing assistance, adding new services, and so on and so forth. As we note here, when we consistently meet customers' expectations, we create a positive customer experience that leads to loyalty. On the other hand, when we fail to meet customer expectations and it results in a negative experience, driving dissatisfaction that could ultimately result in churn. So a key area of focus for Sprint is to recognize our customer's journey is not linear, and to ensure we are focused on connecting various touch points across the customer lifecycle. So with that, if I could have you turn the chart for me, or the next slide, please. So one example of leveraging this customer interaction across multiple channels is what we call, in a new tool that we've put in place, called the Interaction Hub. And this Interaction Hub allows us to consolidate customer history across our various channels to better serve our customers. We leverage this data to ensure our frontline folks have a clear history of cross-channel interactions so that we may better serve our customers. In addition, we leverage this data from our Interaction Hub to more accurately route customers through our IVR. An example of this would be when we route customers who have recently purchased a smart device to a specialized team of associates to help resolve their issues relative to those smart devices. So Interaction Hub is a good example of how we are leveraging customer interactions across multiple touch points and across the customer journey so that we are providing the ideal experience. On the next slide, another example of focusing on the customer's journey is our efforts to leverage digital through Sprint.com and Sprint Zone on the device, which allows customers to help themselves. Dan mentioned this in his previous slides. We see that almost 80% of our customers go to the web support pages first to resolve their issue. So our opportunity, of course, is to meet our customers where they are. And that's what we're focused on at Sprint, is to make sure that we are meeting our customers where they are. We have continued to focus on developing self-serve solutions. I should actually say personalized self-serve solutions for customers that allow them to help themselves. We have continued to leverage Sprint.com and Sprint Zone, and on this chart you'll see the progress that we've made to allow customers to help themselves, and again, getting back to providing the ideal experience for these customers, since that is their preferred way of doing business with Sprint. On the final chart then, and again, I just wanted to give you some tidbits of insights that we see at Sprint, but this really is a journey for us. And in summary, what I would say is, we continue to be very focused on providing the ideal experience across the customer lifecycle. And the recent findings from the American Customer Satisfaction Index would show that we are making progress. And so we're pleased that we believe we're on the right track. We know we're making progress as identified through ACSI as it relates to looking at overall customer satisfaction. So our efforts continue to focus on the customer journey. And with that, Dan, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Jimmy. Definitely appreciate that. Well, maybe a couple of quick follow-up questions with some of this information. Obviously, for Sprint, you guys have done, obviously from the final chart here, a great job over the past couple of years to bring up those customer satisfaction scores. I guess the focus in Sprint has really, it seems like it's really focused to that part of the operations. Has that been something that's kind of been like I mentioned earlier, like a top-down type of thing throughout the organization, or how's that? I guess what was the impetus for that kind of more focus on customer satisfaction?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. It's one of our top 3 priorities at Sprint, and it comes directly from Dan Hesse through the entire organization. So clearly, it starts at the top as a priority, and it has been for Sprint over the last 5 years or so since Dan's been here. Mm-hmm. So really, that's what we have found that has driven some significant momentum for us, is to have that top-down focus on this as a priority, and it continues to be a priority for Sprint.
Gotcha. And you also mentioned the growth of self-care. That's something that we found in the report as well, was that there's a lot of focus nowadays on self-care, on consumers being more comfortable and almost preferring to handle issues themselves as much as they can. I guess the growth of that, is that something that's kind of allowed Sprint to really, maybe be more focused in certain areas when it comes to kind of handling the customer experience?
Absolutely. In fact, Dan, we've done a lot of work here to understand why customers call us. Mm-hmm. And then we've looked at, so what are the alternative methods and what's their preferred method of doing business with us? Mm-hmm. And that's, in fact, where we have made a lot of progress in terms of, again, understanding how can customers help themselves. And, in fact, what we found out was that was the preferred method of solving their issue. So how could we enable that through Sprint.com and or Sprint Zone? Mm-hmm. And I think you made that point earlier as well. We're seeing this focus on customers leveraging their device to serve their needs across the customer journey, or the various life cycles, if you will. Yeah. So really what we've done is leveraged and understood, again, what are the issues that our customers are attempting to solve, and then how do we allow them to solve those issues for themselves, leveraging self-serve.
Got it. That makes sense. Well, great. Well, Jim, we definitely appreciate the insight there. And as a reminder, if you have any questions for Jim or for any of our panel members as we're going along here, please feel free to use the questions tab there on the GoToMeeting control panel and send those in, and we'll be saving the last 15 minutes or so to get to some of those questions. So again, thanks so much for the time and the information there, Jim. We appreciate that. So with that, we'll now bring on Syed Hasan, who's the CEO of Responsetek, to provide some insight into the CEM space from a vendor perspective. Thanks, Syed, and welcome to the panel.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks everyone for taking the time to dial in here. Maybe Dan, if you just go to the first slide for me. I think Responsetek has been working in the customer experience space for over 10 years now. What we've seen very much in the last 4 or 5 years is the telecom sector as being really the leading edge industry in terms of pushing both the concepts of customer experience and also the technology associated with it forward. And I think there is a number of reasons, and this slide, as you go through it, is relatively not new news. You know, we know the industry is highly competitive. Product handset differentiations decreasing, switching costs are being have been going down and obviously legislated in as well. Mm-hmm. Loyalty levels, you know, I think it's difficult to kind of get a real gauge on this, but I think because of the switching costs and because price is such a driver, that's a challenge. So there's a number of issues here that are obviously makes the telecom sector very open to addressing customer experience. For me, the real interesting one is the last bullet point there. The shift that we're seeing over the last 5 years is as Jim said, you know, customer experience is typically been in the top 3 of most telecom companies for over 5 years, ever since we've been involved. But what's really happening is a shift from focusing on a purely top-down approach to measuring and monitoring customer experience to more of a bottom-up approach to attacking, influencing, and changing customer experience on a transactional level. And I think the last bullet point there, companies are moving from this historical view of the average customer experience to a real need to monitor and distribute the actual customer experience at the transactional level. And I think that's really where a lot of the opportunities and a lot of the best practices are that we're seeing, and I think we'll talk through those as we go forward. Dan, if you do the next slide, great. The first thing I kind of want to talk about is the technology component in terms of telecom has a unique opportunity beyond other sectors because of the handset, because of the opportunity that you know all of your customers and all of your customers are connected to you in some way. What we're starting to see is that in the advent of smartphones, as Jim said, it brings self-service opportunities, but it actually brings really interesting customer experience opportunities. And we're starting to see clients, and I don't know if I mentioned, we work with over 40 telecom brands around the world. We're starting to see them to move beyond the traditional email, IVR, SMS, to start to look at things where customers are triggering interactions through NFC, customers are being prompted through geolocation when they're in stores. And we also see that this blurred line between talking to the company and talking to your social networks are blurring. And we're seeing a lot of telecom clients starting to say, how can we bring all of this together so we're actually giving the customers a seamless experience in connecting and communicating with us, and in some cases actually helping the customer share that direct feedback to the telecom company with their social networks. And we're seeing a lot of that integration with not only customer service but social media channels at the same time. And what we're also starting to see is with the advent of smartphones, customers are interacting in a different way. If you go to the next slide, smart technologies really brought the opportunity to listen more. If you look back at 3 or 4 years, most organizations were really reaching out to customers with an outbound calling system where they're getting response rates of 2%. Email has been used sporadically depending on data availability, and you can get up to 25% with email. What we're finding with SMS is that customers are getting up to a 45% response rate. And we're working with telecom companies that are reaching out to 100% of their client base around the transaction and getting a 45% response rate. The reason they're doing this is that they have realized that if you're going to do bottom-up customer experience management, you need way more data to engage the frontline staff, and periodics, aggregated data isn't going to change behaviors or drive performance. So the technology is moving forward. I think as this graph goes on, you're going to start to see things like NFC, instant messaging, all as new channels to connect with customers on an ongoing basis. You can listen more, but you can also connect more. If you go to the next slide, And historically, we've always thought of connecting with customers as being something, well, you have to call them because that's the only way you're going to get all the demographics. Again, our clients are seeing the penetration across all the age demographics is quite significant, even using text messaging. So this is a text messaging graph, invites versus response rates. And you can see even at the over 65s using text messages, you're getting 20% response rates, which is above what you would typically expect even with email, and definitely above what you would expect with a CATI call. So you can connect to more customers using this technology. And finally, I think what's really exciting is you can learn more. Gone are the days of getting a research department to put a survey together and get that out there. What we're now starting to see, again, with the wireless clients, SMS is the preferred channel. And these clients are getting 98% of their surveys responded to within 24 hours. So that 45% response rate is coming through in less than 24 hours, which is not significant if you're thinking about this from a top-down perspective. But when you're looking at using customer experience information to coach frontline staff, either in the retail store or in your call center or field service, what you're starting to find is that if you can coach your frontline staff on yesterday's customer experiences, you start seeing some very dramatic behavior changes, and that's what we're really driving for. So definitely access to customers is key. When you start to do bottom-up, one of the biggest challenges you are is you're moving from a low-data customer experience model to a big-data customer experience model, where the volume is increasing substantially. The variety of data sources that are coming in are increasing. So your omni-channel, your multi-channel, this is data that's coming in through call centers, IVR systems, field service engineers, retail NFC, and also the desire to make that information available for the frontline staff and the coaching staff is key. So you can change behaviors at the front line if the data is relevant and timely. If you end up providing monthly stats, you'll find that the front line's ability to absorb and react to that diminishes very rapidly. So one of the big things in customer experience trends is that we are moving from a low data environment, which is traditional market research, to a big data environment, which requires a lot more scalability in your systems and also a lot more integration, which the next slide kind of talks a little bit to that, which is as you move from when you move to an actionable bottom-up environment for customer experience management, these are some of the things that become more and more important. Your systems can't be owned by marketing or market insights. They have to be integrated with every aspect of the business. They have to be process-driven, so frontline people get only the information they need only when they need it. And you have to be omni-channel, which means everywhere a customer wants to talk to you, they have a similar customer experience in terms of the feedback cycle. So it definitely is becoming more challenging and more important to think about the end-to-end architecture when you think about customer experience. I've got a couple of slides now just to follow up and finish off, which kind of give you some of the data. This is through one of our clients in Europe, 2 countries. This is their distribution of happy versus unhappy at the transactional level. The real thing, and these are the words that are being used. The green means when that word is used, it's in a positive context, and when the red is used, you can see it's negative. What's really interesting for me is that this data is 336,000 different customers that is being absorbed continuously by this organization. They've made the decision that they can't wait to aggregate data. It has to be actual customer experiences, not average customer experiences. And what we're seeing in most of our clients is the green and the red are roughly equal, 35 to 40% positive and 35 to 40% negative experiences at any given time. This one's a little bit skewed because of the countries that it's based in. Now, if you go to the next slide, Dan, what's really interesting is if you start to look at the words that are being used by customers. One second, I just got logged out here. These are the words that are actually being used when customers talk, and we've segregated the words that are used by happy customers versus the words that are used by unhappy customers. What you can see is that customers will use the same words whether they're happy or unhappy, and if you just kind of aggregate data, you're not going to see any real trends. The only way our clients are making an impact is by looking at every single one of these interactions and identifying what is the driver, and is it a behavioral issue with the staff? Is it a product issue? And I know we're going to talk a lot about network, but we also pulled out the network words, and we could see that you're down at the 0.0% level when people talk about network happy or unhappy. So you do have to understand where the network is playing into service, the phone, the brand, etc. So really this is, it's not as simple as just aggregating the data and looking at the keywords. You do have to be able to get down to the detail. Next slide, Dan. Dan, can you get the next slide?
Oh, should be up there, I hope, right?
Here we go.
Okay.
Now.
Yep.
And so just to close off and give people a framework, what we see as best practice is companies that are really using a closed loop approach. Real CEM only happens when there's an action. And what we're seeing with some of the best companies that are doing this is that they're not only listening to every customer, they're actually starting to identify customers that are unhappy on a second-by-second, minute-by-minute basis. And they actually have a closed-loop component that means unhappy customers are quickly analyzed, they're reached out to by a live person, and those customers are starting to be brought back into positive territory from negative. And what we're seeing is some clients that are making massive impacts on customer churn purely by making sure they don't just use customer experience as a new version of market research, which is very much a one-way path, and really using it as a two-way conversation with customers, which means if you are unhappy, we will do something with you as an individual rather than with your data at the aggregate. So this chart very much indicates best practice, and you'll obviously get access to this. And the last slide is just what happens when you do this. If you do transactional customer experience management and you do closed loop management, you start to see closed loop feedback, you start to see these kind of results. Very rapid improvements in customer satisfaction rates, way more data that gets distributed to the front line, so the front line are more connected to the customer and the customer experience, and actually saving a lot of time on a training basis and an education basis, because the information around customer experience is getting straight to the employees in an unfiltered way in many ways. So lots to go through there, and hopefully I didn't overstretch them, but I'll hand it back to you.
That sounds great, Ned. I definitely appreciate that. Good numbers there. Obviously, on this last slide here, I mean, the numbers, I mean, they show that there is financial gain for companies that do this correctly. I mean, are you finding, at least in the telecom space, that that companies and carriers are recognizing this and that they are moving forward with this, or is it still somewhat slow in adoption?
It's interesting. We kind of see a lot of the Western carriers slower than the Eastern European, Middle Eastern, China. And what we tend to find is that North America has historically been a slow adopter of transactional data because they've had so much top-down data. But interestingly, we're seeing Europe, Eurasia, Middle East, Canada, Australia very much on the cutting edge of this. So it really depends country by country and the particular competitive nature of those markets.
Interesting. And it definitely seems like, obviously with all this information that can be gleaned from these networks, that you have to have a really good software stack in place as well to be able to really pull out what's important and make sense of what's important, because obviously that's a big issue. I mean, you can get all this information, but unless you can make it relevant to who it needs to get to, it'll just get lost in the translation for the most part.
Yeah, and we're finding most clients are really, the big step change is they need more data because they want more data available to the frontline staff.
Yep.
And when you want frontline staff to see information every day, you really have a whole different paradigm when it comes to the systems you need.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, great. Well, Syed, thanks so much for the information there. We basically appreciate that. And again, if anybody has any questions for either Jim or Syed to this point, please feel free to use the questions tab there on the GoToMeetings control panel, and we'll try to get to those the last 10 or 15 minutes of the webinar here. But again, thanks, Syed, so much for the information. Appreciate that. Now, we'll be changing topics slightly here, bringing on Hillol, who's from IBB Consulting, to provide, I guess, some more insight here when it comes to, I guess, network challenges for carriers when it comes to dealing with the customer experience. Obviously, with networks becoming more complex nowadays, with carriers bringing on various new spectrum bands, using Wi-Fi for offloading, for customers, I guess the challenge really is to make sure that they're almost oblivious to these changes, because for this to really be successful for carriers, it needs to be a seamless experience. So for Hillol, we'll probably get some more insight from, I guess, how the industry is handling that aspect of the CEM experience. So Hillol, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. So in this session, we'll focus a bit on one of the key drivers of the wireless customer experience, which is the network side. As Dan mentioned, the network is going through an evolution. Compared to a 3G or 4G only network, we are moving to an area where we use this thing called the heterogeneous networks, which essentially means a combination of multiple technologies to provide you the connection at an effective or a lower cost. So one of the key aspects of the HETNet, which we are going to talk about today, is the Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi has been around for a while, but recently, over the last few years, it's becoming more of a mainstream wireless technology, where most of the wireless carriers are offering it in addition to their licensed networks. And people seem to like Wi-Fi. One of the key reasons is the perception that Wi-Fi is typically free. So free service means lower bill and a lot of customer satisfaction there. But as people start using Wi-Fi, given it evolved from an unlicensed domain or with a slightly different background compared to how the licensed 3G or 4G technologies have developed, it brings in some unique challenges, and it's really important to plan for those well ahead so that whenever you are deploying Wi-Fi, there isn't suddenly a huge spike in the number of calls with people not being able to connect or something going wrong. So in IBB, we have been working with several telecom providers who are doing the carrier-grade Wi-Fi deployment. And based on our view from the network side of Wi-Fi, we see there are three key stages in which you have to look at the overall problem. And the way we call them is getting on. That's when you are trying to get on the network, trying to access the network. The second stage is after you have accessed the network, making sure you are staying on it, your connection isn't dropping or your data download isn't slowing to a crawl. And the third part is moving on as you are moving to a different location, or your user, the type of usage that you are doing is changing. How do you move on to a different network or a different location? So we will focus a bit on each of these three aspects and what are the unique aspects of Wi-Fi for each of those. So when we focus on the getting on aspect, in the cellular world, the experience we are always used to is switch on the phone, it connects. If we are Sprint customer, it automatically finds Sprint network, connects there. If it's another carrier, it will find their network. But in Wi-Fi, as you always know, it's a bit different. As soon as you switch on your Wi-Fi, you will see probably somewhere between 3 to 300 SSIDs probably, based on where you are. And quite often you have to manually tell your laptop or your phone or your tablet that, okay, this is the network I use, so go and connect to this network, which isn't a very pleasant user experience. And the second part is, even after you have dictated them, like, hey, connect to this, say, free airport network or connect to this other network, Quite often you have to go to a portal, type in your username and password, and then get access. Now, as Wi-Fi usage is becoming more common with smartphones and devices with smaller form factors, and people are using it outside their work location or outside their home, all those steps that you have to go through for logging into the network are really cumbersome. You want the Wi-Fi experience, especially if it's offered by a carrier, to be like a carrier wireless experience. So the key steps on the getting on are, how do you find the network and how do you get onto the network? The next step is, after, say, you have connected, you did all that, you are now connected. Now, is the connection stable? So quite often in Wi-Fi, what we have seen, given it, say it's offered in an airport or in Starbucks, because it's free, tons of people are jumping onto it. And as a result, the network is slowing to a crawl. And most of those people have an active wireless connection, probably the wireless network, the LTE or the 3G network in that place isn't that crowded or isn't that loaded, but people are just getting onto Wi-Fi. So how do you ensure an intelligent way of managing the direction of traffic between Wi-Fi versus the licensed network, which ensures better connection quality and which ensures a more stable connection? The third part is, say you were using Wi-Fi in Starbucks. Now you start walking away, you are walking towards your car. Most of the time with Wi-Fi, the experience has been, it will stay on as long as the connection can be retained, even though the coverage or the signal strength is really poor and the speed is really low. So there isn't any quality-based fallback to the other network from Wi-Fi. In 3G or 4G, we are used to the experience that as we are driving or walking or moving, it will automatically do handover. Between the technologies, that part is not very stable yet. And the other part is keeping the Wi-Fi radio on in your cell phone. As long as it's on, it keeps scanning for Wi-Fi networks, even if, say, you are driving a car, and very unlikely you are going to use Wi-Fi network from the retail shops or the street side establishments, but it keeps scanning, which drains your battery. Now, given these challenges, which may seem a bit daunting, the good news is there are several industry efforts going on to address those head-on. So some of the key ones are the Hotspot 2.0 and Access Network Discovery and Selection function. So these are the initiatives driven by the Wi-Fi Alliance, the Wireless Broadband Alliance, and the 3GPP standards body. What they're trying to do are two things. One is addressing these network access challenges so that you can access the network based on which networks you are subscribed to without requiring the user intervention. And also, in the subsequent stages of this technology, it will let the carrier or the network operator tell the device, hey, the LTE network is now free, move over to LTE. Or if LTE is congested, hey, we have a Wi-Fi here, move over to Wi-Fi. So essentially moving towards a more automatic and better utilization of all the resources. Another key part is the access based on your SIM card, which will be a secure access, which will provide you automatic authentication, as well as the required level of encryption and privacy of your connection. The third part is, as the network is getting deployed by the carriers, as you all know, the MSOs are also doing large-scale Wi-Fi deployments, coming together in terms of some common deployment philosophy, common design philosophy, so that people start developing a common sense of how the Wi-Fi network is expected to behave, what type of speed it should provide. And the last part is what some of the device vendors and standard bodies are also working on. How do you best optimize the power drain? I mean, given the same battery is driving the screen, the voice call, the Bluetooth, and 20 other things in your phone. So whatever you can do to reduce the power drain always drives longer battery life and another key part of the customer experience. So just to summarize, Wi-Fi is coming and the carriers are embracing it in a big way. There are some starting challenges which the industry is going through. And in the longer term, we believe there is this significant scope of merging the two experiences and offering an overall effective and cost-efficient wireless connection.
Very good.
Back to you, Dan.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that, Hillol. And obviously, this is a topic that, I think for myself, writing the story that I did, kind of touching on this, seemed the most interesting to me because it does seem like you mentioned, it's a technological challenge to really make sure that consumers don't know this is actually happening. I mean, that seems to be the key is for a customer experience to really be positive. They don't want to have to deal with having to turn on Wi-Fi, turn off Wi-Fi, have stuff dropped, connections dropped. And with consumers becoming more and more aware of Wi-Fi as a connection option, that seems to be the challenge going forward, is to really make sure that that part of it is seamless. And it seemed like, from looking back at Syed's numbers too, that consumers aren't really talking a lot about network as an issue, but that almost shows that they probably don't want to know about network. That's not what they're signing up for wireless service for. They just want it to work and not have to worry about all these connection issues and things like that. So to me, it seems like a pretty important topic that obviously the market's going to have to tackle here going forward. So definitely appreciate the insight there, Hillol. And I also want to mention too that if you want some more research on this topic, I know IBB has done quite a bit on this, so feel free to check out the IBB Consulting website, and you can see Hillol got quite a bit of information there too. So definitely appreciate the information there, Hillol. So well, with that, I do want to now bring on Sandro Tavares, who is the head of marketing for Mobile Core at Nokia Solutions and Networks, to provide some insight on the CEM topic from inside the network. Thanks, Sandro, for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Dan, and sorry for this small
no worries.
All right, so I would like to start basically by stating the fact that, well, networks are, of course, getting more and more complex. Throughout what we have seen in the discussion so far today, we are adding different multi-technologies. So the networks now, they're multi-technologies. You have 2G, 3G, 4G working in parallel. They're becoming multi-domain with the addition of Wi-Fi and, in some cases, fixed access as well as a complementary technology. And, of course, due to the marketing situation in general, they're also multi-vendor. And one thing that you cannot have in this scenario is actually to create islands of management, right? Because this will create trouble if you have to address customer issues. So basically, what we are looking into now is the fact that you have to have a strategy for managing the network and the customer experience that is holistic, that is taking consideration, regardless of access technology, regardless of vendor, regardless of domain, it is really taking consideration what is happening to the customer experience, because at the end, they couldn't care less if they're in 3G, if they're in 4G, if they are on Wi-Fi. They want their service to work, right? And basically, to make this happen, we understand, we say that we have 3 layers in management that have to be worked from bottom to the top. So you're talking about network management, service quality management, and then at the very end of this pyramid, at the very top of this pyramid, customer experience management. But anyway, when you're talking about customer experience in a telecommunications company, an operator, and so on, the first thing you got to do is to actually make sure that your network works. And let me start then with network management. So let's talk a little bit about OSS, what has to be done on OSS. So then if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So for OSS, our key word is really simplification. You're looking to a network that is more complex, but on the other hand, you kind of have to compensate on the OSS side to make it more simple, to make it more actionable. So modern OSS systems, like for instance our NetAct 8, they're focusing really on consolidating different networks and access technology into one single view, into one single management system. So that the complexity, even though the complexity is out there in the network, when you're looking to managing the network, when you're looking to managing what is really happening with the services that are being provided, that you're actually bringing a little bit more of additional simplification to the process, right? And another important aspect into the modern OSS approach is on automation. So considering these complex networks, you have to make sure that as much as possible you're automating tasks so that you can actually have always the best network quality available. So we are looking into technologies like self-organizing networks that will be working in parallel to an operating strategy, to an operations strategy, to then make sure that the network quality, which is the foundation for the customer experience, is there. But still on OSS, and looking a little bit further into the timeline here, there's a lot of discussion around virtualization, right? The market is looking into virtualization as a technology or as a solution that will help networks to better scale, to be able to cope with the demand for data that we're seeing right now, that will continue to evolve. And actually, these will also be reflected at the OSS, at the the network management layer. So not only the OSS systems, they're going to need to be able to manage virtualized networks and to address the specific needs of data centers and so on, but also they're going to have to be able to scale as well. So our view to that is that actually the OSS will also be virtualized. And that's what we're doing with our NetAct 8. So it is a fully virtualized OSS that is able to also manage virtualized networks. So we're talking about an OSS that is moving into the cloud and that is able to manage basically whatever network, regardless of access technology or even domain. But then the question is that enough? Just managing the network is really enough for managing the customer experience? And well, on the past, it was. When you're talking about phones that were just making calls and sending short messages, well, you could get a pretty good grasp of the customer experience just at the OSS, but it's not the case anymore. And that's why CEM became such an important topic, as we have seen throughout this webinar today. And that's why we also, in NSN, we have been doing a lot of work in this area. But then what exactly are the characteristics that are required from a CEM tool in an operations, in an operator environment, in a telecommunications environment? Well, there are some points that we believe to be absolutely paramount when you're looking into customer experience management in telecom operators. The first one is that the tool, the CEM tool, it has to be able to provide a consolidated view of the customer experience insights in one single place. You cannot have that situation of hopping from one tool to another to actually try to figure out what is going on. So I cannot have one tool for 3G, 4G, and another for Wi-Fi. It has to be consolidated. It has to provide insights about the customer experience on real time. And this is actually one point where telecommunication operators, they are very different from traditional retail. You see a lot of discussion on big data and analytics on retail, where it's actually pretty okay if you get information about what happened to your customer last week. For an operator, last week is way too late. You have to have information real time about what is happening with your customer, either to address a problem proactively so you actually don't have to have this person calling your call center to complain. This is fast. You have to be able to act proactively and solve problems when they appear, but also to be able to spot new opportunities, right? New service packages that can be sold, new services that can be pushed to customers based on what you're seeing them doing. Other than that, it has to provide actions. It is not enough just to know, for instance, that there is something wrong. You have to be able to take actions upon these insights and correct what is wrong before you actually generate a big problem on your customer experience. This is basically our view of what is needed on a CEM tool, on a telecommunications environment, and we try to make this happen in our solution, which is CEM On Demand. But let's look at this in a little bit more details in an example. One of the content packs that we have in our CEM tool, and they work pretty much like as if they were apps, but we call them content packs, is this customer experience index that you see right on your screen. Basically, what it is doing is to give you a real-time view of what is the customer experience for the services you're providing for different segments of customers in specific areas of your network coverage, right? This is done via an algorithm. We could spend hours explaining this, but there is no actual question being asked to the customer. This is basically just calculated based on what is happening with the network and the usage of the service. Let's say, for the sake of the example, that this area right here in the middle that we have here in lower Manhattan, it has a problem now in the experience there. The number is 52, and if we dig into the tool, we'll figure out that it's actually related to a data issue in 4G. In the same tool, you actually have information related to 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, and everything. So you can, first thing you're going to do is to figure out if you're having the same problem on 3G, because if the 3G network is okay, you can just throw in a configuration to actually move some customers back to 3G and guarantee that they can use data. It was not the case. 3G and 4G were both congested. So the next option that we have is to offer Wi-Fi coverage. So what do we do here? Well, we will send throughout this tool a notification to the customers apologizing for the issue, for the congestion issue, and offering them Wi-Fi coverage to compensate for the problem. And at the same time, we are going to go to another content pack in this tool, and if you can go to the next slide, Dan.
Yep.
Yeah. So this other app in our CEM tool is the device activation for Wi-Fi, where we can then configure all the parameters that are related to the Wi-Fi service for these customers that are in this area that is affected. And these parameters will be sent over the air to these customers' devices to actually have them automatically configured to utilize Wi-Fi during the congestion problem that we have, while, of course, the engineering department is working on expanding the capacity and so on. So basically what we are seeing here is that we can utilize a CEM tool that is holistic, that is gathering information from several domains, and we can take actions based on these insights to help customers move from one technology to the other without having to take a lot of actions, and without having a degradation in their service quality. But with that, I'll pass the ball back to you then. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Sandro. We definitely appreciate that, and some good insight there, and obviously some good recommendations for companies looking to kind of solve the network side there when it comes to CEM. So we definitely appreciate that insight today. Well, we have a few minutes left here for Q&A. I definitely want to thank those for sending in some questions here. I know before we went to Sandro there, we did have a question that I was beginning to ask when it came to the look of, I guess, social media when it comes to interactions with CEM strategies. And that was something I think I was going to try to maybe send to Syed to maybe get some insight there, because I know Syed, in your presentation, you kind of touched a bit on the social media aspect of it. So I don't know if I guess your view on I guess the use of social media when it comes to a CEM strategy for carrier.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think it's really important just to realize when you're dealing with social media data, what data you're dealing with. What we find one of the biggest challenges is when you get to an organization, they confuse customer experience data that's credible and actionable with social media data, which often is not easily identifiable back to the customer. And I think, in Responsetek, we monitor customer experience that's direct as well as social customer experience data. Mm-hmm. And you do have to know that you're dealing with two very different pieces of information on the inbound. However, where I do think there's a massive opportunity is dealing with social media as a way to get customer experience insights out into the market, and we're finding more customers are starting to post actions that they've taken as a result of customer feedback on their social media network. So my advice would be, just be careful of getting sucked into the hype around social media to make sure it's credible, actionable, and identifiable before you really kind of put it into your customer experience stack.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, maybe I guess from Jim too. I guess from Sprint's point of view, I mean, how do you guys view social as part of your overall experience? Is it something you guys are taking maybe a conservative approach to at this point, or what's your general view of kind of the use of social media when it comes to interacting with customers?
Yeah, Dan, we see it as an important forum for communicating with customers. Again, it's back to going where customers are, and clearly social is where most of our customers are. So it's leveraging that and making sure that we're building that into the customer lifecycle and making sure that we are leveraging that touch point accordingly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, and like Syed said, you have to make sure it's a reliable touch point as well. It seems to be always a challenge when it comes to social media, is kind of making sure that you get the right information coming in so you can get the right information going out as well. So
absolutely, and Dan, to that point, our goal also is to make sure that we're communicating and providing factual information, as you just mentioned. Yeah. Oftentimes it's not always accurate, so it's an opportunity to make sure that the conversation is factual.
Yes, it is a bit of the wild, wild west out there at times. So, well, good. Well, we're just about out of time here. Unfortunately, we only have time for one extra question there. I do want to let those know who are listening in that we are going to share the questions that you sent in with our panel members, and if there's time, they can follow up with you offline as well. But again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And also let everyone know that there will be an archive of this webinar on the rcrwireless.com site in a few days for those who might have missed some of it. And please, again, feel free to check out our feature report on this topic. That's also available on our website as well, the CEM Keeping Customers Connected and Happy report. And with that, I want to thank everyone for participating today, and a special thanks to Jim from Sprint, to Syed, to Hillol, and Sandro for providing the insights. Thanks so much, guys, for the time today. We definitely appreciate that. And thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us, and have a great afternoon.